in Minneapolis, where they're voting on the issue of their police department, putting it on the ballot to make reforms there. Of course, it was the center of so much attention with the death of George Floyd last year, and so that's led to this ballot initiative. Joining us right now is Janae Bates. She's a communications director for the Yes for Minneapolis Coalition. Glad to have you here on the show. Janae, tell folks again what the actual ballot initiative is. You have people saying, oh, this is about defunding the police, reforming the police. Exactly what are y'all trying to accomplish there in Minneapolis?
Yeah, we are really working on and have been working on for a really long time a measure that makes it possible for the people of Minneapolis to be safe. And that is definitely safe from police violence and also in community harm. And what we get to vote on with Yes on 2 and through neighbors who have been knocking doors. 22,000 people put this on the ballot in the city of Minneapolis, is really the ability to be able to do two things. One is to expand public safety so that what used to be the Minneapolis Police Department becomes the Department of Public Safety, so that it can house both police officers, but also other qualified professionals like mental health professionals, like homeless outreach specialists, like substance abuse specialists, because we know that currently we are asking police officers to be all those things. And they're saying, look, you're asking me to be a social worker. That's not what I'm trained to do. And so we're sending them into situations where a social worker is probably the best qualified person that needs to be there. And so we get to expand public safety and have these other professionals also getting to work in the same comprehensive department with police officers. We also are changing the infrastructure. Currently, the Minneapolis Police Department has been able to do quite a bit of harm and to do it with impunity. We have and are becoming more and more aware of many situations where police officers have violated policies, have lied about it after the fact. We definitely saw that when we all witnessed the murder of George Floyd, and the sheer fact that these officers named that as a medical distress crisis. And we're seeing more and more frequently issues like that are taking place. And so we're changing the infrastructure of the department so that no longer will policies be made behind closed doors in a black box, but instead by having the mayor and city council nominate and appoint a department commissioner in the same way that every other department in the city operates, we can finally have real representation and a citywide public process to name how policy is made, what happens when policies are violated, what kind of discipline takes place. And so this is really an opportunity for the city of Minneapolis to have finally some accountability and transparency with those who are called to protect and serve, as well as finally have these added professionals as a Department of Public Safety, really expanding what the city and the ability for people to be safe, quite frankly.
You've had a lot of people, again, keep focusing on defund, 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 but that's not really what y'all are doing there in Minneapolis.
That's right. That's right. The reality is that, these slogans, I've been doing policy work, especially around policing and accountability for a while, and every good piece of policy that we've ever passed, none of it would ever fit on a bumper sticker or a t-shirt. And so the reality is that, it is a mischaracterization of this particular charter change to say that it is defunding the police, but what it is doing most certainly is adding the kind of resources that the city needs. Even our police chief, Chief Arredondo, had named when he was testifying in court against Derek Chauvin in the murder of George Floyd, that the majority of 911 calls that come in actually are not law enforcement related. And yet, that is where we're constantly asking police officers to handle all of these things. And so even with a fully funded police department, we are seeing an uptick of violence in the city. It's time that we really invest in strategies that we know work, that are about lowering issues of gun violence, that are about intervention and prevention, and quite frankly, having the integrity to name that that is not what police officers, what we've hired them to do, and that's not what they've been doing. And so we want to lean to them for the well-trained, disciplined job that we want to deploy them for, but also we need to deploy the right response, the right mix of people to situations when folks really need it.
All right, let's go to our panel. Questions for Janae. Let's start off with Eugene Craig. Eugene, what you got?
Hey, appreciate it. I love the work you guys are doing. Hopefully this ballot measure passed. But I guess my question is, when it comes to ballot measures, I know a lot of jurisdictions, you have to have a supermajority. Have you guys been reaching out to, pro-justice conservatives and libertarians that could very well be allies on this issue? Before it's popular, was on the forefront of things like police brutality and changing the way police and policing are handled in this country.
Yeah. What's been particularly interesting about this particular ballot initiative is that it was put on the ballot by a very broad coalition of folks across the city, across race, income, region, and even political ideology. But it is also important to note that the city of Minneapolis in itself is considered a democratic city. And so what we are finding, which adds an interesting nuance to this fight, is that our opposition has actually really been people who consider themselves Democrat and yet have been getting a bunch of funding from folks who usually fund Republican agendas and initiatives. And so the agenda has been the same regardless of the partisanship.
Faraji Muhammad, your question.
Janae, thank you so much for joining us and hearing about this work. I'm interested. It's interesting that in Baltimore, we actually have a mayor and a city council that appoints the commissioner. The mayor, provides the nomination, the city council appoints. But I'm wondering, with this department set up as the Department of Public Safety, if that does that shift the money from taking, I don't know what the percentages for Minneapolis Police Department get from the city, but talk to us a little bit about how this thing is going to work out in the future, and more importantly, what do you and other organizers think will happen over the next couple of years as we kind of move forward if this ballot is approved by the public on the election day tomorrow?
Yeah, so in the city of Minneapolis, Minneapolis is actually an anomaly in the state of Minnesota. Their police department is anyway, that in 1961, the Police Federation cut a deal with the mayor of 1961 to give that mayor, unilateral control of the department. And in exchange, the Police Federation got what is equivalent to a Police Federation contract in the city's constitution. No other city in the entire state has this. And so what that has led to, of course, is completely abandoning any kind of leverage for the city to have in negotiations with the Police Federation. And so we have this minimum staffing number of armed police officers in the city's charter that equates to a little over 35% of the city's budget. And again, we have a fully funded police department at that 35%, which is about a little under $200 million a year. This is in addition to the $60 million that we've been paying out in police brutality lawsuits and police murder lawsuits, in addition to the $30 million in counting that we've been paying out for overtime and PTSD claims and early retirement. And so we are in a position in Minneapolis where this isn't even a conversation about, defunding police. This is how do we actually stop the Minneapolis Police Department from defunding the city? And so this is really about ensuring that this Department of Public Safety gets the necessary funding to really keep people safe. We have for example, we have a Department of Office of Violence Prevention that sits in the health department. And anyone in that department will tell you they have made magic happen on a shoestring budget. Compared to what the Minneapolis Police Department receives, they're getting pennies on the dollar. And yet they're able to actually make some real waves and do some real work in terms of violence prevention. And so it is most certainly the hope that the Office of Violence Prevention will become integrated into the Department of Public Safety, where we can utilize a lot of their preventive strategies and measures, and start to add, again, a lot of these other very necessary, life-giving folks like mental health providers and social workers, qualified specialists to show up when we need them. And considering that the city is very well funded, it's an abundant city. The funding is there. It's just time that we make smart investments and steward our resources right.
Makes sense. Thank you, Janae.
Tammy?
Thank you for explaining the Police Federation situation. I can only imagine that they would be opposed to the reform. And right here in Texas, in San Antonio, earlier this year, San Antonio Police Department attempted to reform their police department. And you hit the nail on the head when you mentioned the Democratic candidates that take money from these organizations that are quote unquote allies, the fake woke allies I like to call, where they're silenced from speaking up for the same reform that we are supposedly fighting against. In Texas, with San Antonio, unfortunately, the reform bill did not pass because of AFL-CIO. The Texas branch of AFL-CIO endorsed a lot of the Democratic candidates from the congressional race in the Texas District 6 special election down to the council members who were in the race, who got endorsed by AFL-CIO. And AFL-CIO, the police union, that was fighting against the reform in San Antonio successfully, essentially silenced the Democratic candidates, even whenever I particularly called them out as a congressional candidate that was a Democrat. Like, you can't be bragging about your AFL-CIO endorsement when they're fighting against police reform, and you're pretty much bought into silence. So how do you plan on addressing that ahead of tomorrow so that individuals really understand that some of these candidates are actually hurting the cause towards reform?
Yeah, I mean, most certainly that is the battle that we continue to have in the city of Minneapolis. The reality is it's not a new one. Just as I named that the opposition to this measure most certainly has been the Police Federation writ large, but also it's been the big corporate landlords, the big corporate developers, the Chamber of Commerce. That is most certainly a group that, on the statewide level, they have been fighting police reform and accountability for a long time, and they are funding Democratic candidates. Ones who are ostensibly, saying that they're pro-police, but really when we're saying we're just pro-safety, and making those two pitted against one another. And it is definitely a reality that we have to face here. And knowing that, many cities across the country, just as you named, are going to be facing these same fights, I think we all have to go in wide-eyed, recognizing that we need to pay far less attention to who has a D next to their name and actually listen to what they're saying. If they are using fear-based, dog whistles, race-based dog whistles, if they're talking law and order all day and actually not leaning into what the people of your city can actually have, that should definitely trigger your ear, right? We've spent 4 years being inoculated against, these kind of fear-based tactics. And sadly, many of us haven't gotten leaned into that inoculation. And so it is most certainly something that we're navigating here in Minneapolis.
Well, we applaud the work that you're doing.
All right, then. Janae, we certainly appreciate you joining us. Good luck with tomorrow's initiative.
Thank you.
First, back to our Roland Martin unfiltered video in just one moment.
Maureen is saving big holiday shopping at Amazon. So now she's free to become Maureen the Merrier. Food is her love language. And she really loves her grandson. Like, really loves.
Time to be smart. Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Oh, no punches!
Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way.
Honored to be on a show that you own. A Black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Roland was amazing on there.
Stay black. I love y'all.
I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
You dig?